Okay, we are starting Nezikin, Baba Kamma. The Mishnah starts off in the beginning of Baba Kamma, Arba Obis Nezikin. There are four primary damagers, that things you have to pay for. And that is Hashar, an ox. Within the ox is the main category. Within the ox there are many division 1, which are called the Avos, and then subcategories of that, as we'll see in the Gemara. Hashar, Habar, a pit, Hamave. Now, Mave, the Gemara is unclear what it is. It's either Shein or Adam, the Gemara will talk about, and a heaven and a fire. Now, the Mishnah now explains, why do I need all four to be written? Why not just write, you have to pay for all damages? Why does the Pasuk have to describe all four? So he says, Lo Harei Hashar Karei Hameve. The ox is not like Mave. Now, the Mishnah doesn't say in what way are they different. The Mishnah just says there are differences, and that's why it's required to be written each one on its own. But Lo Harei Hamave Karei Hashar, and Hamave is not like Hashar. But and the Gemara will explain in what capacity. Lo Zev Zeh Sheyesh Ben Ruach Hayim, and both of them have a uniqueness, both a shar and a mave. Either a mave is a shein of an animal or it's a person, but either way, an ox and a mave are both living. Karei Eishem Baruchim is opposed to fire, which is not a living thing. And the ox, the mave, and the fire have one uniqueness that they all share, and that is that they all travel. Right? An ox travels, a person travels, and a fire travels. As opposed to a pit, which is stationary. If someone falls into the pit doesn't move. So that's why the Mishnah, that's why the Pasuk had to say each one. The Gemara is going to go through what are the exact differences. Hatzara Shavah Shebehen, the one common denominator in all of them is Shedarkin Lahazik. It's common for a damage to happen. Shmiros and Alecha, it's your responsibility. Ukeshehizik, and when it happens, Chav Hamazik L'Shalim Tashlumin Ezik Meitav Haaretz, the owner of the damager has to pay with the choices of his land. Meaning you can't give cheap land, you have to give of the best. Okay, that's the Mishnah, and we will see. Now, the Mishnah says, Arba Oves Nezikin, that there are four Oves, like main categories of Nezikin. Midiktani Oves, from the fact that the Mishnah says Oves, Mechlal Deika told us. You could deduce that there are toldus, meaning there are subcategories. That, let's say, Shar has within it an Av and a Tolda. Right, there's the main thing, and then there's the subcategories. Now we find this in many areas of halacha. Most notably is Shabbos. Right, there's Av Malacha and a Tolda. So the question is, basically, let me lay out the next daf. It's actually a couple dafim, but today's daf. By Shabbos, an Av and a Tolda are the same. Now they're called differently, as the Gemara is going to explain, because an Av was in the Mishkan, a Tolda was not in the Mishkan. But there's no difference in halacha between Av and a Tolda. If you do an Av Malacha, you're chayiv skila. If you do a Tolda Malacha, you're also chayiv skila. There's no difference. It's more semantics. On the other hand, we have by Tumah, there's Av HaTumah, right? And Av HaTumah is like a sheretz, right? That's the source of the Tumah. A sheretz, zera of a person, or a person that touched a dead body, because the dead body is Avi Avos, the person is an Av HaTumah. You have the Av HaTumah, and then you have everything that they touch is called a Tolda. It's the subcategory, right? So you have the sheretz, which is the Av, and then if the sheretz touches something, what it touches is a tolda. There are differences in halacha between Av and a tolda. A sheretz can contaminate things that the thing that touches the sheretz cannot. So an Av is more severe. So by Shabbos there's no distinction, it's more semantics. By Tumah, there are differences. The question is, by Nezikin, whatever the Av is, which we'll talk about, and whatever the tolda is, which we'll also talk about, is there a difference in halacha between the Av and the tolda? By Nezikin, by damages. So the Gemara explains like this. Gabi Shabbos, Tanan, it says regarding Shabbos, Avos Malachos Arbam Chazrachos. There are 39 Av Malachos. Avos Mechaldik Toldus. Now, if you call something an Av Malach, if there's 39 Avos Malachos, that means that there are subcategories, there are Toldus, there are subcategories of each Malacha. Right? Toldus saying Ki Yotzeben, or Lav Ki Yotzeben. So, what is the status by Shabbos? Are the Toldus the same? And is it just semantics, or are there halachic differences? So at first the Gemara tries to explain that there is a halachic difference by the laws of Shabbos. What is the difference? First it says, Loishna av chatos, loishna tolda. I mean, if you do an av malacha, you're going to be chayiv chatos. If you do a tolda, you're going to be chayiv chatos. Loishna av skila, loishna tolda skila. If you do an av, you're chayiv skila. If you do a tolda, you're chayiv skila. So my ikka ben av tolda. So what's the difference? So the Gemara says there is one small difference between an av and a tolda, and that is nafka mina ilu avid shtei avos bahadi adadi. Let's say a person does in one act of forgetting. He's shoygig, right? He forgets a Shabbos, and he does two different avos malachos. So he does, he winnows and he sifts. Okay, in one forgetting. Inami shtei toldas ba'adadi, or instead of two avos, he does two separate toldas in one forgetting. Mechayva kol chada b'chada. Yechayev two carbon chatases. But let's say in one forgetting he does the av and its tolda, right? Whatever an av and its tolda is, you do an av and its tolda. What's the halacha? Loy mechayev el chada, right? So let's say he plants a tree and he waters the tree. So the av is planting, and the subcategory, the tolda, is watering. So he does that in one forgetting. You only have one carbon. That's the only difference. Of the difference in av and a tolda is that avos require their own chiv chatas, and an av and a tolda only get one if it's the tolda of that av. So that's the one difference. The Gemara says, well, that's not universally accepted. According to Rav Eliezer, in that scenario, you be chayiv two. And according to Rav Eliezer, there's no difference. If you do two different avos in one forgetting, chayiv two. If you do different toldas in one forgetting, chayiv two. If you do an av and a tolda in one forgetting, chayiv two. There's no difference between av and a tolda. So the Gemara says, according to Rav Eliezer, the mechayiv tolda makam av, my karli av, my karli tolda. According to Rav Eliezer, there is zero halachic difference between av and a tolda. So why is one called an av, one called a tolda? So the Gemara says, you're right. There's no difference. The answer is very simple. There is no halachic difference. It's semantics. So why is one called an av and one called a tolda? If that action was involved in the building of the Mishkan, it's called an av. If it wasn't, it's called a tolda. Very simple. So by Shabbos, basically an av and a tolda are the same. It's just different ways of categorizing them, but they're the same. Now that's all regarding Shabbos. Opposite extreme is Tumah. Gabi Tumas Tanan, when it comes to Tumah, the Mishnah says in Kalim, Avos HaTumah, the Av of Tumah, the primary source of Tumah are Sheretz, the dead lizard, whatever. Shechva Zera, a man's Zera, semen of a man. Go to the next page. Tameh Meis, and someone who touched a dead body. Right? So those are all Avos. Told us in Lavki, but there's a major difference, right? If you have someone that touched a dead body, he's the Av. He touches someone, that person is a Tolda, is a Rishon. There are major differences between the first guy and the second guy. How so? Ilu Av metami adam v'kelim. An Av can contaminate a person and vessels. Vilu Toldas, but a Tolda cannot. Meaning a Sheretz, if a Sheretz touches a person, that person is Tami. And but the Sheretz is able to contaminate a person. But a person that touches a Sheretz, that touches another person, does not transmit Tumah. The only thing it does is Adam v'kelim lo'imitameh. It transmits food, Tumah to food. But it cannot contaminate a person or vessel. So there's a major difference in the laws of Tumah regarding Av and Tolda. So Shabbos, no difference. Tumah, yes, difference. The question is, what about Nezikin? Hachamai. Is there a difference in Hezek? Again, there's Arba Avos Nezikin. In one of these four, is there a difference between the Av and the Tolda? So, Rav Papa, this line from Rav Papa, I think is going to be like 3 or 4 daf, if I'm not mistaken. Some avos and toldas are the same, some are different. Meaning, there are 4 of them. There are 4 avos nezikin. There are 4 main categories. Some of them, their toldas are the same, some of them not. You got to go through each one. Basically, there's no rule. You got to go through each one. So what we're going to do today is we're going to try to find out which one is the same and which one is different. So let's start with the first one. Arba avos nezikin. Right? The first one was hashar. An ox. Now, within the ox, the ox has 3 avos. So the ox is like, the title page, and then within the ox is 3 avos. Gimel avos nemru b'shar. Keren, shein, and regel. A horn, right? Goring, shein, eating, and regel, trampling. Now, the major, by the way, as you're going to see, those are the 3 avos of an ox. They all have toldas. Now, the toldas are not necessarily with the same body part, it's with the same concept. Meaning, let me explain each one. A keren, when an animal gores, that's the av malacha, the av of hezek, of a shar. Now, the tolda, what's the main inyan of a keren? The main inyan of a keren is, it's not very common for an animal to gore. It has no pleasure from the goring. And it intends to damage. Those are the 3 main points. Those are the 3 main points by a keren. That it's not very common, it has no pleasure from it, and it intends to do what it does. So sometimes you'll have a tolda A tolda can be without a horn. A tolda can be, if it has those characteristics, that's a tolda of a keren. A shein, which is eating, a shein would be pleasure. It has pleasure. And a regel is very, very common. It's where the animal's just walking and it tramples something. So let's go through each one. So the question is, one of these things, not just by shar, bar, mav, and hever, one of these, the av and the tolda are not the same. So let's analyze within shar. Let's start shar. Shar has 3. All we're going to do today is keren. Let's figure out what is the av of keren, what are the toldas of a keren, and are they different? Spoiler, they're not. So the Mishnah said, the Gemara says, keren minolan. First of all, how do I know that a keren, which is a horn, how do I know that that the damage of keren is done with a horn? So, Tatan Rabbanan, the pasuk says ki yigach. Right, the pasuk describes damages ki yigach shar es ish. Right, the pasuk says when an animal yigach a man and kills him. So, what does yigach mean? So, how do I know that yigach means a horn? A negicha ela bekeren. Yigach means to strike the person with a horn. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, is a pasuk in Tzidkiah. The pasuk says, "Vayasle Tzidkiah ben Kanana karne barzel." That Tzidkiah ben Kanania took horns of iron. Obviously not of an animal, but he took horns. Took iron, made it look like horn. He says, with these tinagach, I will pierce, I'll gore Aram. So you see, that the word nagach is referring to a horn, because he said, with this horn, yinagach. Hold on 1 second.
Recording stopped.
So you see the word yinagach referring to a horn. V'oimer, a second source that ki yigach refers to a horn. V'char sharoi hader loi. The pasuk says a king is like an ox. V'karne re'im karnov, and his majesty is like horns. Bahem amim yinagach, and with those horns yinagach, he will. So you see the word ki yigach is 2 sources. One is from Tzidkiah, the false prophet, who said with these horns yinagach, and the second one is this pasuk. So my V'omer, what do you do the second pasuk for? So the Gemara says v'chi tema divrei Torah divrei Kabbalah yofinan. Well, very simple. We're trying to figure out the biblical explanation of the word ki yigach. What part of the animal is it? And that we brought a pasuk of Yasli Tzidkiah. Tzidkiah is in Malachim. It's in Navi. So maybe we don't want to learn Torah from Nevi'im. The problem is it's not learning anything. It's not like learning a chiddush from Navi. There's a word in the Torah that we're trying to translate, and the Navi is just translating it for us. It's not like I understand if there's a concept that like we're going to learn from the Navi, a whole new concept, a whole chiddush. I get that you'd be a little bit uncomfortable doing that, but this is not that. This is that there's a word in the Torah that we don't know exactly how to translate, and we're looking at Navi just push it as a giloy, just to reveal what the Torah means. That we can do. So what's the issue? Why do I need a second pasuk? That's not learning out from Navi. So why do you need the second pasuk? So the answer is like this. The issue with the first pasuk is that Tzidkiah was referring to a horn that was detached from an animal. It was a piece of metal in the shape of a horn. We're trying to apply that to the laws of a horn by an animal that's attached. Here's the issue. There's one very unique halacha regarding an animal keren, goring, and that is that the first 3 times that it does it, you only have to pay half damages, and after 3 times the animal is what's called a mu'id, then you have to pay full. The reason being, after 3 times, that's on you. The problem with the first source is that we're trying to apply it to an animal whose horns are attached. But your source is for a horn that's detached. So then I would argue maybe that distinction between the first 3 times and the 4th time, that the first 3 times it's half damage and the 4th time it's full damage, maybe that's only when the animal grabs a horn in its teeth because it's detached, if that's your pasuk. Therefore we need a second pasuk to say karne re'im karnov. No, while it's attached, yigach. That was the issue for the first pasuk. I might say with just the first source, that when the Torah makes a distinction between tam and mud, that the first 3 times you pay half and 4th time you pay full, maybe that's only by an animal that the horn is detached. How would a horn be detached? The horn fell off, the animal picked it up within its teeth and ran into the person. You could say, oh, the first 3 times is very rare. But that's what the pasuk is referring to. Detached horns. But maybe if the horn is attached and it just gores in the regular way, maybe you should always pay full. That's when you need a second pasuk to say that yigach means horns. Okay. So the first av that we're going to analyze within shar is horns. What are the toldas? And again, the tolda of an av does not mean the same body part. You could have toldas of a keren with teeth and with feet. The main yisoid of a keren is that it's not very common. It doesn't get pleasure from it. It's not like it's eating. And it intends to do damage. If you have those three, it could be different animal parts. So tolda keren, what are example of toldas of keren? So negifa, pushing. The animal shoves you with its body, not with its horn. Neshicha, biting. Not eating, biting, so that's not very common, intends to do damage and does not get pleasure from it. Revitza, sitting. The animal sits on a pot and breaks it. Ubita, and kicking. Again, regel is where it's walking regularly. This is it intends to do damage and it hits. So now the Gemara just has a quick question before we analyze this. So a horn is the av malacha because it's yigach, means horn. But negifa, pushing, without the horn, is a tolda. Why? Maishna negicha dekar le'av. So why is with the horn called an av? D'chsev ki yigach, because the pasuk says yigach. It's gonna, gore with an ox with the horn. No negifa nami ksiv ki yigof. But there's a pasuk. The pasuk says ki yigof. The pasuk says ki yigach ish eshar. Right. When the pasuk describes a person, it says ki yigach. But when it describes an animal goring another animal, it says ki yigoif shar ish eshariyehu. So you see the word yigoif, which is pushing. So it says the word yigoif, which is horns. That you're calling an av because it's in the Torah. But negifa, which is pushing with the body, shoving with the body, that's also in the Torah. Ki yigof. So the Gemara answers no. Hi negifa negichihi. When the Torah says the word yigof, it actually means horns. Meaning, generally, since the Torah was written in Chazal's terminology, yigof means pushing with the body. But when the Torah says yigach and yigaf, it's the same, horns. One is where it's goring a person, that's yigach with a ches, and one is goring an animal to an animal violence, which is yigof. But they're both horns. The pushing with the body is not sourced in the Torah, that's why it's called a tolda. So, hai negifa negicha, hitatanya, as the Brisa says, pasach ben negifa v'sayim ben negicha. In one parsha, the pasuk describes goring as with yigach, and goring as yigaf. Both are the same. They're both horns. So basically, in the Torah's terminology, yigach and yigaf are the same. One is goring a person, and one is goring an animal. Why does the Torah use different terminology for both? The answer is ksiv ki yigach behemoth. Adam de islay mazla ksiv ki yigach behemoth lesay mazla ksiv ki yigof. The answer is yigach implies more force, more of a brutal attack. And that's why it says that by a person. You see, because people have mazel. People have the ability to protect themselves. They either mazel means an angel watching, or it just means pashut, that we're more, we more protect ourselves a little bit more. And therefore, for an animal to attack a person is harder than to attack an animal. So, yigach, by a person, is because it takes more to damage a person as opposed to an animal. Now, the person has intelligence to avoid being hit. So therefore it says ki yigach, which implies more damage. It's harder to hit a person, that's why. So it's the same thing, it's the same act, but one's a person, one's an animal. So for a person, you have to, for a person, it takes more, so it says with a ches. Now, what's the halachic difference from the fact that it takes more to damage a person than to damage an animal? Milsag agavurche kamash malan. We said before that for the first 3 times, it's considered you pay half damage when it gores, because you didn't really expect it. The 4th time, that's on you. Now you got to pay full. Says the Gemara, what if the first 3 times it gored an animal, and now it gored a person? So it's the first time goring a person, but it's the 4th time goring in general. The halacha does not count. Why? Because goring an animal is easy. Goring a person is more impressive. So you need, if it gored a person 3 times, now it's for sure a violent animal. And now if it damages anybody a 4th time, a person or an animal, that's considered full payment. But if it gored a animal 3 times, that's not a big deal. They don't have mazel to protect themselves. But then if it gores a person for the first time, even though it's the 4th time damaging in general, you only have to pay chatzi nezek. If an animal attacked a person 3 times, that's considered a mu'id even for attacking animals, but vice versa not. Okay, so we said that the tolda of a keren is pushing with the body, and then biting. So the Gemara asks, I mentioned this before, that it doesn't matter the body part, it's more the concept behind it. So the Gemara speaks this out. Neshicha told the Sheni, wouldn't biting be teeth? The answer is no. Loy. The difference is by teeth, there's pleasure when it eats. That's the definition of Shane, is that pleasure. What makes Karen is the fact that there's no pleasure. Biting has no pleasure, therefore it's more categorized as Karen than Shane. The next one was squatting and kicking. So the Gemara says, wouldn't that be a told of regel? Wouldn't kicking be more regel? The answer is no. Loy, regel has ekematza, ha'en has ekematza. As I said before, regel is very common. This is not common. That's more Karen department. So now we want to know, to summarize this, to end this discussion by Karen, we're looking for a situation where the Av and Tolda are different. So our first Av is Karen. Karen is the Av, and these all are the Toldas. Are they the same or different? The answer is they're exactly the same. You'll have to pay by Karen, you'll have to pay Negifa, you'll have to pay by Negicha, you'll have to pay by Ravitza, Beita. There's no difference. So the Gemara says, Elo told the same lav ki yetsu dam Rav Papa ahai. Ile mahani maishna keren de kavanas lahazak meicha shmer salecha. Hanami kavanas lahazak shmer salecha. You should have to pay by the av and the toldas. The answer is yes, you're right. Told the keren ki keren mechika merav Papa ashen v'regel. The answer is, we conclude this discussion, at least for today, that when Rav Papa said that av and toldas are different, he was not referring to keren. Keren, the av and the tolda is the same. Maybe he was referring to other things. So tomorrow we're going to analyze Shane and Regel, see if maybe that was different. But Keren is the same in Av and Tolda, like Hilchah Shabbos. Stop here.